Show.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the 580 Show, episode 148. And before I get into our guest this week, I just want to remind everyone, if you head over to the 580 Barbell YouTube channel, we're getting very close to our giveaway ending. So if you haven't seen it, super easy giveaway. Basically have to be subscribed and comment on the video. And that's basically the extent of it. We have an awesome giveaway where we're paying for any guy or girl to go to any competition in full, and also giving you guys some extra cash to help with travel, hotel, stuff like that, with Liquid Chalk, pre-workout, Cody Abel, and Stronger Together's thrown in a month of programming, some merch from them, and a Lift Hard Die Strong's thrown in merch, a whole ton of giveaways. So really easy. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment on the video. If you watch the video, they have all the instructions right on there. It's just called the 580 Strongman giveaway. So got that out of the way. Dante, I keep forgetting to mention it, so I wanted to do that today. But
no, I'll put a link and everything too.
No, yeah, that's perfect. But joining us today, I'm really pumped. The Feeleys, Katie and Brian Feeley. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
So the main reason, I mean, obviously you guys are awesome people, but the main reason for having you on this week is you guys announced Strongman Corporation Nationals last year, and you guys are going to be doing it again this year. And we always talk about Strongman Corp Nationals like in the weeks leading up to it, but you know, we were talking, Katie, I think it'd be cool to have you guys on for a little preview, talk about, you know, the events, the sessions. It's a different streaming kind of setup this year, significantly different. So, you know, making it clear how people can obtain that, and just kind of talk everything about nationals with the people that are going to, if you're not going to be there, that are going to be announcing it. So, you know, I appreciate you guys joining us, you know.
Yep. Happy to do it.
So we're excited this year to know that we're doing it. Last year,
yeah, I remember
fairly late in the game, so we're excited to be able to do a little extra prep this year. And
well, wasn't it? You guys were literally on the way last year when you guys found out. I would say, you know, so one thing I thought was really cool last year was you guys were really like, you're involved in Strongman, which I think is like a key, like a no-brainer and essential for if you're going to announce a show, right? Because you understand what's going on really in depth, and you may have some ties to athletes just since you guys have been around Strongman so much. My second ever show, I competed against you, Brian, and
the Halloween.
That was the first ever time I met you. So
I was like, this crazy kid just won this competition. He's doing a full workout afterwards.
I remember that, but no, like, I think it really impressive last year was watching back, and I was in the first session. It was either I was in the first or the second session, and my wife, we were flip-flopped, however it was, and I was running him back and forth to the hotel and trying to focus on myself, but also watch my wife. And you guys were just super personable and like encouraging, and like just it kind of felt like you knew everyone, which is super impressive because there's 250, 300 athletes. So with knowing that you guys only knew 24 hours before the show, I'm excited with you guys having more of a heads up this year.
Yeah,
you know,
some prep time. Yeah.
And I think nationals too is it's important to remember that it's a lot of people's first time, and that there's family members tuning in and giving people, it's a big deal to qualify for the first time and go. So treating it just like any other big show where people get the time and attention that they deserve, and not just focusing on like the one or two names that people might know, or who's going to get their pro card or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be able to give the people that are watching, you know, because the athletes are new to it, so their families have no idea what's going on. So just to be able to give them a little bit of kind of a walkthrough of like, okay, here's what's going on.
What is this crazy stuff that we're doing?
Yeah. That's always like the toughest part is, you know, they may tune in exactly like you guys just said, but they have no idea what's going on. I thought you guys did such a great job at kind of explaining that and breaking it down to the person who's literally watching this sport for the first ever time. Right.
Yeah. I felt really grateful that everybody was so gracious afterwards. We were like, did we suck or
no? thought
it's good to get good feedback. And obviously like we're open to all feedback, but the good kind is the best kind.
I thought like last year we kind of do like a recap after, and obviously I competed last year and look at the positives and the negatives, but I thought the live stream last year was such a positive, and I couldn't believe the numbers on YouTube. And it's one thing I want to talk about is I thought last year, not being negative, but I loved it being offered for free on YouTube because I think that drives so many more people in. And this year will be on 8 with ADL, which is private. We'll post a link multiple times from our Instagram, and I'm sure kind of everyone will be. If you guys are following them, everyone will be kind of throwing the link out. Strongman Corp will be throwing it out, but it will be a pay to watch system this year. How does that change anything for you guys? What's it been like, I guess, your early thoughts and stuff? I'm sure you'll learn more in the upcoming weekend, but working with ADL this year, different setup. What are your guys' kind of thoughts?
I think the positives are that, so James Deffenbaugh is the one that had run it previously and did a beautiful job. And like, that's not his job. So he just does that because he is a big nerd who likes it and he's really good at it. So I think we're very lucky that he has that interest and ability. That said, it's a lot of work for James because he's doing all the scorekeeping and then, setting up, he's got literally video game controllers to like move all the angles around and get everybody's names on the screen and coordinating it all. So I think it'll be really good for him to not have to do, he's still going to be doing 15 jobs, but now he can do 14 instead of 15. Right. So I think for that, it's positive, and having somebody that can really like focus on it and have the equipment for it will be positive.
Yeah, no. And I think, ADL does a great job. I mean, they're very professional. So it's good to obviously have that professional touch on the feed. It is a little bit of a bummer, just, to be perfectly honest, that people have to pay to see it. I hate to, for families that just want to see their kids or whoever compete have to pay you 20. But at the end of the day, if you're getting a professional service, you have to expect to pay for it. So.
Right. The sport is definitely in that transition phase where even a couple of years ago, there was no such thing as a live feed. So the fact that we even have it at all is pretty wild. And to be able to like have commentators and have your name up on the screen and have your family be able to watch is pretty cool. And then now like making that a commodity and like people that do that professionally, like James, honestly, like he should, I would love like someone else to pay him, but it's, it's a tough line to walk. So I'm curious to see like how it turns out with viewership and how it goes here. And then we're all learning as we go. Right. So like,
No,
treating it as a package was probably a good move too, because they're packaging it with nationals, masters, nationals, a record breaker, and then there's a couple pro weight classes. So it's like there's the one in October and then two, I think they're both in December, or one in November, one in December. So you can get them all together, which I think is a smart move. It's like $45 for all three.
Yeah, $45 to watch nationals 2 days, America's Strongest Masters and the record breaker. So that's 2 more days, and then ASM as well, I believe. So I'm glad you guys brought that up. Another thing I thought that was like interesting that you guys just mentioned, I think it's a good point, is live streams are so new to Strongman that there's no data to follow. We have no idea what to charge. Like you really don't. Everything right now is just so introductory, where it's like you could get 50 buys or 1,500 buys. You have no idea. And it's so up in the air. So I'm glad people are trying it. And I know James will be very relieved, because I know Dante can relate right now, because we've gotten into live streaming, starting to live stream our events, and we've gotten to do a couple, and it is a full-time job. Even commentating is a full-time job. Like
we were commentating and like editing, and Josh was doing like behind the scenes stuff. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot to do. It's a lot to do everything. So
and James had us kind of like updating like the things that show on the thing.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I think like
I don't know how anybody does this.
When James did the live stream for the women's, the ASW weight class women recently, and I think it was the and there was men's and women's together. I don't remember which weight classes they put together. And they were like experimenting with getting donations for the live feed, and that didn't necessarily go very well. So it's like where everybody's just kind of figuring it out. And I think in the sport too, like I kind of relate it to things like programming. Like when we got into it 10 plus years ago, like nobody was paying for programming. Like the idea that you would have a coach that wasn't like physically watching you lift was wild. So you're like saying like, we're going to charge $50 for programming. People were like, whoa, settle down. And like now people are charging hundreds of dollars a month for that. So I think like, it's just going to, as that industry has grown, like the streaming and commentating is going to grow with the sport
experimentation, you know, like coming up with these events for your shows that you think are just going to crush. And you're like, oh, it was a horrible idea.
We're all figuring it out.
No, for sure. It's funny. Like, I'm not calling you guys old, just being in strongman. You mentioned 10 years in strongman. That is literally like, that's a really, really, really long time in this sport. Cause so many people come and go, and you guys, it's probably why you're so passionate about it, but you've seen so much change in 10 years, I'm sure, that you can, it's funny how new online programming is, like you just mentioned. Like, it's crazy because it's taken over. It's literally I would say it's over 99% of coaching now in strongman, right? And powerlifting. I mean, going to a gym, it's very rare to see someone that isn't like on their Train Heroic app or whatever, you know, Quick Coach, whatever. And just like, hey, so-and-so from wherever's coaching me. And, you know,
I mean, you know, the contrast between 10 years ago and now, just in terms of there being equipment for people to train on, you know, I mean,
it's a good point.
Years ago, it was, if you could get your hands on stuff, it was, and we still have some of that crap too. It's just like homemade stuff.
Yeah.
Then now you can just go on Rogue and order like a whole strongman gym, you know?
It's no, it's crazy. And it's so crazy how accessible it is to compete as well. Where, you know, I've heard people talk about just, you know, over 5 years ago, you know, a local show for you was 6 hours away. You're like, oh man, this show's close.
Yeah.
And now it's like, people are like, oh man, I have to drive an hour to a show. It's like, you should so thankful, you know, that.
Yeah, we were always really lucky in that respect because there was a pretty good community in this area.
Yeah, Southeast PA has always, like Central and Southeast PA has always been like a pretty big hub.
I mean, you know,
and Jersey is really
we've been around for a long time, but you know, guys like Kyle Bixler have been around even longer.
Like John Ward
down in Maryland.
There's people that have been at this.
Yeah, you look at
times as long as us.
Yeah, you look at Bixler and all his shows now are Delaware Strongest 15, 16, PA Dutch, like crazy, you know, to really think about the grand scheme of things, how insane that is to be running a show for 15 straight.
I think this past year he ran his 100th show. So it's
wow.
Been, it's like, which I'm like, I think I'm at like 12. I'm like, oh man, I got a long way to go.
It's like YouTubers get those plaques for like 1 million subscribers. Bixler should get a plaque from Dion for 100 shows, like a golden plaque. That's so impressive. And the other thing, in addition to the live stream, that's a change this year, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts on it, was the breakdowns of the sessions changed. And we did talk to James about it if people didn't hear that episode a couple weeks ago. But so before, it was really just women, men, right? I believe, am I misremembering this, or was last year women were in the morning, right?
Yeah, they flipped it back and forth a couple times. I think they had originally said in the afternoon, or that might have been the year before. I don't remember. Somewhat recently, they flipped it. They're all blending together.
Yeah, it's.
But last year we did end up doing women in the morning and men in the evening, which is pretty standard. Like,
yeah, and so, this year the AM session will be the 120, 140, and 160 women. So 3 of the 5 classes, and then the men's 265 and open. So 2 of the 5 classes to get 5 out of the 10 for the morning, and then the other ones will split.
Yeah. I kind of love it. Yeah, I kind of like that they're mixing it.
I think it makes a lot of sense, because if you look at the classes, just legit, I mean, you guys know as much as anyone, when you're running a show, and you guys are on probably one of the coolest shows I've never been to is Beer Muscles. We can kind of talk about that too, but you look at logistics, right? Like, how's it, if you're a promoter that truthfully cares and you want the show to run smooth and well, you look at, hey, how's this going to flow with this and this? And you try to kind of piece that puzzle together. And I kind of like this because before it was always just like, hey, women here, men here. And if you look at the roster, 231 men and super heavyweight men are by far the biggest classes. They're enormous this year. I don't know if you guys have seen the number.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I think this Nationals for Strongman Corp is going to be the biggest one in a.
The one that I did in 2021, I think there was like, I think there were 80 guys in open men. Yeah. That's the biggest men's class that I've seen.
Yeah, we were there as well.
Lightweight women. So that was another like that year was also really big. But I think that one was too big because the qualifications were weird because it was after the COVID year. So there were more qualification places available than normal because it was like the people from 2019 and 2020 because things got canceled. So there was like almost 3 years worth of qualifying athletes that I think because I think this year's is like more typical of a normal year.
Yeah, we're kind of
like 3 years worth of nationals smushed into one.
Yeah. I love that they're balancing it out that way. And I mean, not only just from a balance and an ease of running the competition perspective, but also just from a, everybody getting to see a broad range of athletes all at the same time too, because if you're there on women's time, you miss the guys. And if you're on the guys' time, you miss the women's time. So it gives everybody a chance to kind of see a broad spectrum of athletes at the same time, which I think is cool.
I think there's also a distinct change in air density and smell from the morning to afternoon.
You got to balance out that men's bathroom.
Yeah, and it is honestly, and the general, like, it sounds kind of weird to say, but like the vibes in the building in the switch between the morning session and the afternoon session when it goes from women to men, it is just like it's like two different competitions. And I think that there's going to be a lot more balance mixing them together and just logistically, like when I run a show, I don't put the groups together until after registration ends. And then I look at how many people are in each group, and the ways that I pair them up are to make sure that the groups are we run 4 groups at Beer Muscles, and I want to make sure the groups are all roughly the same size and lifting similar weights. So there's fewer weight changes to do. It's easier on the judges, it's easier on the volunteers, and then everyone's going to be running so we're running 4 events simultaneously. And I want to make sure all those events kind of wrap around the same time. And if you have 40 people in one group and 15 in another, that doesn't work out very well. So I think that separating things in a way that like you have an equal number of people versus just arbitrarily, like gender is not a divider for logistical purposes.
There's inherently right now where the sport is, there's more men than women that are signing up for these, just for whatever reason that is. It's just the participation there's more men in it. So the AM session, if the AM session was women, it would go a lot faster than the PM session. So I think it's a good idea logistically to look at it. I think also the nationals you're talking about in Roanoke, I believe is the one you're talking about. That was when they still had like subclasses too. So the classes were goofy where like 300 men were kind of their own class, but like we're also still just super heavyweight.
Yeah, and so the weights are the same, so you have to keep them together. And now, like, I'm glad that subclasses are gone.
Yeah,
I think it's way more clear without them.
Everybody, let's be honest, everybody's going to miss those 2 165 guys.
Yeah.
I wanted to chirp in real quick, just real quick. Yeah. I'm just a little biased that I liked the afternoon session just based off of last year, because I remember, I'm not trying to blame, the first group's usually the one that goes and they don't have the idea. So, well, the thing I'm trying to talk to is like the floor from last year. Like everyone struggled on the first group.
Yeah.
So maybe going in the afternoon, which I'm going in the afternoon again, I'll be able to watch at the beginning and kind of like take notes, saying like, oh, this didn't work here. Maybe I can adapt to here. So.
Definitely.
That's definitely an advantage.
Definitely a tactical advantage there.
I think if you're talking about, and it's something I want to get into, we'll come back to it, but that's definitely a tip I have for people having competed at nationals multiple times, is learn from the other classes. Like, it sucks for my wife who was a lightweight woman in the morning because no one was taking their shoes off yet, but I was able to adapt, and almost everyone was, and do what you were talking about, Dante. So that's definitely a tip, is pay attention, because there's little things that may just click and make sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And at a local show, it may not make that big of a difference, but at something like nationals where you're going to have people that are pretty close in ability levels. Like if you can get an advantage, that's if you can get an extra rep or like save a second off your time, like that could make a big difference. So it's worth paying attention to what's going on.
I know everybody always wants to warm up for 3 hours before they're going to lift. They should really stop and watch the other people compete. What's going on.
Yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this and it's your first nationals, or you know someone's their first nationals, the biggest advice I can give to you is to soak it all in, and you'll learn a lot. My first nationals, I learned so much. I got to watch guys that were better than me, and they have done it 2, 3, 4, 5 nationals, and how they carried themselves, how they warmed up, how they waited between events. Like, you will learn a lot. You know, don't put that pressure on yourself to how you're going to finish. I mean, finish the best you're going to, but like, treat it as an experience too. And I think you will come out of it, if you go with a positive attitude and like a sponge mentality, you will learn a ton.
Big, huge learning opportunity. Yeah. I think
like just watching Andrew Hanus my first time, and Cody Abel, like, you know, like it's like one I always talk about is I got paired next to Andrew in the throw bags, my first ever nationals, second ever event, or third ever event. And if you know Andrew, he's amazing athlete, but
he's all right at that. Yeah.
He's probably top 2 in the world in throwing bags. So I'm next to it, and I'm just getting crushed, but I can go back and I can watch him and see, wow, man, like he has all 5 of these over before I even touch my second bag.
He's freakish at that bag medley. I don't know. He just did that USS Open show where he did the open weights in 14 seconds.
Yeah, he won the heavyweight weights. And he is heavier now, but like, you know, 200 something pounds, not over 300. So that's definitely my biggest advice is be a sponge.
Yeah. Sit back and watch, and just don't be so concerned about overwarming yourself up, or, you know, like you see people that are going to go into a max event, you know, where they have 3 attempts at a max lift and they do 12 warm-up reps, and you're like, oh my God, what are you doing?
What's it? Yeah, it's like, it's also that, like, keep it simple, and don't do something. This is kind of contradictory of what I was just saying, but don't do something just because you see someone else doing it in regards to warm-ups and stuff, because you've trained for nationals. You know, if you're doing nationals this upcoming weekend, you've trained for 6, 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever you've trained, and you know what you're capable of, and you know the events. They're not a surprise to you. So, you know, do what you've been doing, and then learn from people and make the adjustments in the off season or before your next show. You know, 5 minutes before your event isn't the time to try a new thing just because so-and-so's doing it. You know what I mean?
No, and I think that, like, our general advice for anyone competing, whether it's at nationals or just in general, is not to try anything new on comp day. So, like, no new food, don't try new pre-workout, don't try new techniques. Like, you've been training for however many weeks or months, and that's gotten you this far. And like, there's definitely going to be room to improve. There always is, but now is not the time for that. Like, now you have to, like, just get into comp mode and do the things that you know work for you or have worked for you to this point. Trust your coach, trust your training, and trust yourself to do, you know, don't overdo it, and just plan, execute, and then you can always make adjustments for next time. But making those adjustments on the fly and is not usually
like these last man standing events too is another instance where you see people that just take every weight. They start way too light.
And you'll see, I'm sure, like you'll hear our voices just get sad on the live stream. Oh, this guy's on his 8th deadlift. Like, imagine if he just come in heavier. You know, it's sometimes you end up surprising yourself, and that's a great thing. But we generally recommend like 3 to maybe 4 attempts on something like that deadlift, especially because you can skip attempts.
People routinely break world records in powerlifting and Olympic lifting with 3 attempts. So
and you know, and like I was saying, you know, these events aren't a surprise, so you should have a ballpark of what you're capable of, right? Like, you're not going to come and deadlift 1,300 pounds on this trap bar if the best you pulled in training was 715.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you have a good idea.
Adrenaline's helpful, but it's not that
helpful.
No, you'll get that 5%, you know, whatever bump that you sometimes get from competing and having the adrenaline and stuff like that. But No, it is crazy what like psychologically can happen to an athlete at a comp where you get very like tunnel vision and your brain just kind of gets loopy. And, in hindsight, you're like, why did I do that? I mean, I know it's happened to me, right? Like,
Oh,
sure it's
everybody's
happened to
done it.
all four of us. I'm sure it's happened to where it's like, you look back and you're like, why would I ever do that? Like, why did I eat like a mustard sandwich? Like, and I don't even like mustard, like it's like, cause I saw someone else, like,
Yeah.
keep it simple,
Yeah, you have to be a sponge, but you also have to be a discerning sponge to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I think like, especially doing different equipment, like transitioning from a high school trap bar that we've been using to a kabuki trap bar might kind of be psychologically affecting some athletes too. But you gotta like, that's what the warm-ups for. You feel it up, like, oh, this felt different when I did a training. So yeah, that's sort of like the experience of doing like my third nationals will come into play, where I'm just not gonna freak out over different equipment. Because remember the first nationals, it was like a rogue log, and I was training on a pit bull, and it
we
was
both
like
zeroed it.
It threw me off, threw me through a window.
And that's where you see a lot of experience come into play too. Even I remember specifically at the WUS, that World Ultimate Strongman. I thought that they had a women's show a couple years ago, and the women, the first time that they touched the log was when they said 3, 2, 1, go. They didn't get to warm up on it, and it was like wrapped weird in the middle with rope, so it was just like a super weird implement. And you can see the difference between like women that are competing at that level that are like, this is like 10 of the top women in the world, and they adapted so quickly to it versus like you get thrown in, to nationals, and like you see a lot of that experience, and like what athletes are able to calm themselves down and be like, I know how to do this. It's going to be fine. It's a little different. And what athletes are like, oh shit, I've never touched this before. I'm going to die.
Yeah, right.
Like, you have to like limit that panic. And remembering too, that like strongman as a sport is so much of it is just like show up and lift. And like we're very like we were talking about earlier, like a lot of our equipment when we started was homemade. I like the first time I touched a keg was at my first competition when I had to carry it, which they did not announce until we got there. And then we're like, by the way, we're not doing stones, we're doing a keg carry. And I was like, I've never even picked one of those up.
Yeah, Katie
and like
did.
that's the kind of thing that used to happen. And so the fact that we have access to this equipment now, I'm like, oh, these spoiled kids and all their fancy, and knowing like the dimensions of the things and being able to go buy it.
I think there was a show that Katie did years ago at I think it was at Coliseum, where they showed up and they were like, you're going to deadlift this shed. And we're like, okay. And then it started raining and the shed just got saturated with water. So it just got heavier and heavier and heavier as the day went on. So how can you prepare for that? And now we get people coming into our gym or our previous gym now that bring tape measures and measure all the shit, and they're just like right first down. You're just like, oh my god, dude, just
there's a fine line between being prepared and being, if you want something that calibrated, go to Olympic lifting. Like
100%. That's one thing I've always thought was cool about strongman is the adaptability aspect, where you have to sometimes, like I'm a huge advocate. I think athletes should always have time to warm up. It's not going to be an optimal exactly 1 hour or whatever, but I do think like just as the sport grows, you should be able to warm up, but stuff is going to change and stuff's going to be awkward. And I'm sure you guys beat your head off a wall, because I know I do. When you promote a show, is exactly what you guys just said. Like they want people begging for the exact measurements, the exact levers, and I'm like, man, it's a Viking press. Like it's a frame. It's a, I do like that in some aspect to keep strongman weird and
it takes a lot of it just takes some of the fun out of it for me. You know what I mean? It's like, if you know exactly every little thing, it's like, I love that little element of like, when we did Halloween that year, they were like, we're going to press a motorcycle.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I didn't DM the Mauser and be like, hey, what brand motorcycle is this? And I was like, it's going to be a motorcycle, right?
And it ended up being a dirt bike with a sandbag taped to it.
Yeah. No,
I was getting ready to do that, and that guy pressed it and split his nose open across it, and I was like, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we should bring it back to like the theme of nationals that we attempted to talk about. That like I appreciate the introduction of new stuff. Like I think some people are freaking out a little bit about the yoke wheelbarrow thing. I think it's going to be cool, or it potentially could be terrible. Who knows? But I think it's to be able to keep pushing the sport forward and like thinking up new things and equipment and ways to challenge the athletes physically and mentally too. Like I think part of the sport is being an adaptable athlete, and like the most successful athletes are the ones that you can throw something at them and they'll adapt to it, and that's just as important as technical abilities and strength. And I think that that's a cool part of the sport, and I would hate to lose that with
for sure. No, and a couple things too, like you know, it stinks for the athletes that haven't even seen what it looks like, but it's like that for everyone.
Yeah.
So
even playing field,
you know it's a yoke and you know it's a wheelbarrow. James described his vision for it. So as long as they have it there in like rules meeting or, you know, for the warm-ups, I think it's all fair game, you know, whatever. But also just one last thing on what we were talking about with nationals, like some advice. It's easy to say, you know, just focus, but your first nationals, I think the mental aspect of like still remembering to focus, because it is a lot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because you'll get to a show if it's your first time there and it's the first time you're ever going to be at a arena with kind of more of a big feel, and there's going to be 300 other people like you. So it's a lot. So just try to remember your routines and stuff like that, because I try to reflect on myself, because it's easier said than done. Because my first year there, and I know Dante's first year because we went together, we were like kids in a candy shop, like, oh, looking at here and here, you know. And it was really difficult our first times.
And I feel like, you know, keeping in mind, you know, that you know, not to put my perception of how you should look at a competition or nationals or anything, but just like have fun, because the stakes are really low.
Right. They feel really high.
Feel really high at the time, but ultimately
we're
all doing this weird dumb sport that you really don't make a whole lot of money doing, and you get like crappy homemade medals and stuff. And so like take all that stuff into perspective. Not that people shouldn't train to excel and do well at nationals and all that stuff's all great. But at the end of the day, like, you know, nobody's going to die because
why we're all doing it, which is more
winner,
the community and fun and to challenge ourselves and to do that. And like, if your best also is first place, that's awesome. But if your best is to show up and like not zero for the first time
and have a good attitude
and meet some people and get a good experience and learn things, like you're getting just as much, if not more, out of it than the person that shows up and wins.
Yeah,
for sure. Win or lose, we're all going to be at work on Monday. You know? My Monday following, I got 15th in my first nationals and I won my second nationals. My Monday at work was the exact same both times. So that's a great perspective, you know. But let's talk about the events a little bit.
Sure.
And kind of what you guys are looking forward to seeing. Maybe just kind of anything that you think, like real quick. Day one, sandbag toss for max weight, which I love it not being an overhead as the first one. Like I think that's cool. It's a different event first, because it's always overhead first, so that's cool. So the first day is sandbag toss for max weight, overbar, log clean and press for reps, and it's that Trump one and Atlas Stone medley. That's day one. What do you guys think, and what are you excited for? Just talk about day one, kind of.
I think we're going to see some big sandbag tosses, because typically that's an event that comes up later, and as a promoter, you'll often use it as kind of like an opportunity for your muscles to like chill for a minute, where you're putting, like such heavy loads, and then the sandbag like is challenging, but in a very different way. So to see that first, I think you're going to see it like with people with high adrenaline and low fatigue. So potentially we could see some really big sandbag tosses, which would be fun.
I like that. I like that format a lot better than the 4 or 5 bags over too, because that's always just over. So, you know, it's so quick. And it has more kind of like a Highland game.
Unless you're me and you throw your 4th bag over and over and keep missing. And then
I'm so envious and just perplexed when I see some of the weights that these guys are throwing in the videos leading up. And I don't know what the heaviest bag we're going to see is, but if I'm judging off Instagram videos, which usually isn't the best way to judge, but sometimes can be, it's mind numbing to see the weights that people are throwing over these, for the big guys, 16 feet.
That's great.
Yeah, it's an interesting event for us, like, to watch as technical coaches and commentators, because you see some people with like beautiful technical textbook form that are still not moving a ton of weight, and people that are just grabbing it and chucking it that are crushing weights. And it's such a, like, some people's bodies just seem to understand the movement and do it really well and come to them naturally. And like, I love throwing sandbags. I'm like mediocre at it, but I had to work really hard on the technique and spend a lot of time with it to get it to that point. And I'm still like very average, where like there's people that just like come in the gym and they're like this. I'm like, oh yeah, like that, I guess.
No, it's so frustrating.
You never know what you're going to see on that event. So I think it'll be a fun one to start on.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. I get kind of not that there should never be max events. I get kind of, I zone out a little bit when it comes to like,
which is great when you're commentating.
So the deadlift, I'm sure it'll be exciting, but at the same time, I'm kind of
No, one thing I really do like about max events at Nationals, and something I think that's cool, is that we have it on day 1 and day 2, is everyone's out there, right? And everyone's got their own lane. So there's going to be 4 lanes, or no, how many for the max?
I think it changed. I think he said it was going to change.
Yeah. Do you remember how many he said, Dante? Was it 6? 6 lanes for the max event?
Yeah, I think 6 on some and 4 on others.
6. I think it's going to be 6 lanes for the trap bar and the sandbag toss, and then 4 for the others.
Yeah.
But my point is, what I really like about the max events is everyone's out there, right, in their respective lane, and then you just see it thin and thin and thin as the weight goes up, and then like, you know, you look and there's 3 guys on this one and 2 girls on this one, and it's really cool to just kind of see it start with everyone and just kind of like Squid Game style. Last
it is, and you're right. So it's going to be 6 lanes on the sandbag. So there's going to be all kinds of stuff going on.
It's gonna be hard work for you guys.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna be great. I'm trying to keep them who's throwing.
4 eyes, and
give us grace on this one.
Yeah, that's
like for event 1 too. Like, I don't know any of these people's names yet. I don't recognize them yet. So it's gonna be an exciting. From our perspective.
I do. That's the aspect of the max events that I do like, is when it gets down to those last like 4 or 5 people on each lane. And that's when it gets like super exciting.
And they tell you to clear the floor as an athlete, but everyone's like peeking around the curve.
It's always so funny as everyone's peeking around the thing. Yeah, no, I have no idea what to expect as the heaviest bag, but I know it's going to be super impressive. Like, as a spectator this year, I know that's one event that I'm like super looking forward to. So
it should be a fun
it's cool. It's like I said too, it's kind of a throwback to like Highland Games, like weight for height, you know, that kind of, so that's
for sure.
Bring that into it.
And day 2, we kind of mentioned it, but they have the max trap bar. I think it's super cool. I think that's a unique deadlift on like a super nice piece of equipment. Like, Kabuki, I think, kind of tends to overbuild everything in a really good way. And so I think that's really cool that they're doing the max on that. And the yoke wheelbarrow race that we kind of mentioned in the power stairs, that's day 2. I think we'll definitely see deadlifts over 1,000 on the trap bar.
For sure. We were actually just checking out the trap bar.
I feel a little sad for the women, particularly the smaller women on the trap bar, because they got the wide one. And I just, as a lightweight woman, that is what crushes me on anything. Anything side handle is when the handles are real far apart. So I think that like taller athletes and longer armed athletes are going to have a significant advantage on that.
Sure. I think like even as a smaller guy, like a really wide frame can like throw me off sometimes in a carry event. So that's a really good.
It's hard. The pick just gets so difficult. And it's just.
I got these little Cabbage Patch doll arms that don't reach out.
I think overall though this year, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Like, I do like the event selection, and I think it's super creative and kind of out of the norm within reason. Like, they're still kind of blue blood events. But they're kind of all combined and make for a really interesting show.
It's very well rounded this year. I like it.
I like it a lot. Mix. It's got that good mix of static strength and dynamic,
a lot of athleticism involved when you talk about power stairs, a yoke to wheelbarrow medley, throwing, multiple bags, but also and an Atlas stone medley with 4 stones, but also, you know, the log's heavy.
Yeah.
The Trump log's heavy, a max deadlift, yoke's going to be, you know, still, you know, so I do think you guys are right with it's a good, balance. I feel bad for volunteers for power stairs and, some stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love watching power stairs though. I think
For
that's
sure.
always a fun event to end on because of the head-to-head nature of it. And it's exciting. And seeing people like race is cool. Like it's a good finishing event. So I like it. It's a good, sometimes I think you get stuck with events that aren't very fun to watch. And then keeping in mind that for nationals, like we talked about earlier, a lot of the people that are going to be watching are potentially like friends and family members who don't know anything about the sport. And they're like, what the heck is this? And it's easier to relate to it when it's visually appealing and interesting. And like I always say that about like truck pulls and stuff. Like everyone that's pulled a truck is like, it's not actually like a pickup truck is not that hard to pull, but it looks really cool. So, and it's relatable, right? Like you can be like, that is a truck. And like people understand what's happening. So I think this year too, the event selection is very visually appealing and will be appealing to people that don't necessarily lift themselves or know a lot about the sport.
Right. And I was just looking with the pay-per-view, not to just go completely off topic, but it is they do have a special link that we will post for it, maybe including here, Dante, but it's adlpro.live/SC for Strongman Corporation. And it's just $20 for 2 full days, 4 total sessions. So that's kind of cool. And it is, like Brian and Katie mentioned, it's a professional live stream. So, you know, it is going to be a little bit higher quality if you watched last year on the YouTube. So,
I mean, you do get us.
Yeah, and you get the Feeleys.
That might be a high sell or not a reason to spend $20.
You never know what's going to happen.
No, it'll be really good. What else? Like, is there anything that you guys kind of are looking forward to, or you know, just overall excitement of getting that job as like the announcers for it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a really good opportunity for us to kind of mix with everybody. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, and I was looking through the roster. There's a lot of names I don't know this year. So getting to see like so many newer athletes and just be like, oh, okay, I see what this person's about or that person. For me, that's the coolest part, is to see people that are coming into the sport doing their first nationals. And you know, I'm not sure how you.
Yeah, no, I think I'm excited with how many new people there are. And I felt last year very engaged in the whole weekend, which was exhausting because it's a lot to sit and commentate 8 straight hours for 2 days. But to be able to like I felt like getting to know everybody over the weekend was really fun. And like we made some really good connections with people and got to know people. And
any chance I think that either of us get to make the sport like more approachable, and you know, that we'll always take it, you know, just
and making
the
it
sport in a good way.
Like I was so excited the first time that I went, and you know, my family couldn't go or watch, and being able to provide that experience for other people's friends and families, I think is just like a really, like, I feel very lucky that we're able to do that. And it's like important to me that we provide a good experience for them and their families. Cause it's like, it's a big moment. It's cool. It's fun. Like it's
definitely, if you're listening and you're competing and you see the Feeleys and they're not like overly busy, just introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm competing, and, you know, it'll help them out and you guys will get, you know,
please say hi and tell us if we're butchering names and stuff up. And like last year, we really enjoyed being able to, with the exception of one jerk on the comments on the chat that we had to block. Everybody else was great, and I think we're gonna set up some version of that probably on Facebook, so that people can like chime in and ask us questions.
That's a great idea.
Let us know if we're screwing things up. And
because that's the one unfortunate thing about not doing it on YouTube, is you don't have that built-in like feedback.
It's almost like
see the comments if we log in separately, I think. But we want people to interact with it. Like that was one of the other parts that we really liked, was interacting with people that weren't physically there. So definitely, like, if you're listening to this and you plan on watching Nationals, like, please do. And like, know that we are like, we're reading your comments, we're taking it in, and like, we want to hear from you and interact with you. Cause it's a small, fun community. Idea. So like, we want to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Right. It's almost like a built-in volunteer when you have that comment section. Cause like, I know just Dante and I doing shows, like butchering someone's name, or like when we face a certain direction, they don't hear us well. So like, it's that constructive criticism you get back from the chat too.
Yeah. So like, we want to hear that stuff for sure.
Yeah. We had, I think it was last year, we had somebody too on the chat that was like, I think that bar's misloaded.
Yes, someone caught a misloaded bar. It was great.
Wow, like, that's
please let us know.
Yeah, that's great.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, I totally forgot.
Yeah, and it's like, that's the difference between watching something like Strongman that's so relatively small and watching like the NFL, which is super impersonal. Like we do have that opportunity to interact, and it's a good,
in that respect, we're lucky as a sport.
Yeah, it's a fun and cool thing to do, and we're excited to do it.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, just wrapping up, but you guys have been involved in Strongman, like we talked about, for so long, coaching, competing, having a gym. Do you guys have, and Dante, I want your perspective on this too, because this is going to be your third Nationals. So we'll go with the Feeleys first, but do you guys have any other tips for people? I mean, we kind of got into it earlier, but is there any other tips that if this is so-and-so doing their first ever Nationals, would you have anything else that we didn't talk about for a tip for them? We did talk about a lot of it, but
yeah, we did go through a lot. I mean, I think that what you said is super valid. If you get a chance to see an event before you do it, take it. Try not to overwarm yourself up. Make a list of all the stuff that you need to take with you at least like a few days before you leave, so you don't forget anything.
Pack your equipment in your carry-on.
Yeah. Okay, look, that let's actually stop for a second, because what Brian said is huge, because it's crazy. We are like prima donnas with like Strongman equipment. Everyone's got wraps. I was talking to someone yesterday. I have 4 different pairs of shoes for whatever I'm doing in Strongman. So like, go to wherever you're collecting your stuff from and go through every single event. If you go to Strongman Nationals on Instagram, they have the itinerary. So walk through your weight class itinerary and say, what exactly am I going to use for this? From warm-ups to when you're done with the event, and make sure you have every single thing in your bag. That was a great piece of advice, honestly.
Yeah. And like I said, and put the stuff that is super specific to you in your carry-on if you're flying.
Yes.
Because there's some stuff that you can borrow and replace, and there's some stuff that you cannot replace.
Yeah.
And like the stuff that you need, like, don't worry about chalk and that kind of stuff, or even like, to be honest, like a belt or but your shoes, your sleeves, like things that are very personal. Yeah. Like put them in your carry-on. Yeah. Actually, I did a pretty lengthy post. That's on the Power Plant website. We can send you a link for it. That's a Strongman packing list. It's a printable list.
Oh, I've actually seen that.
Yeah, before. And I included like considerations for if you're flying, considerations for if it's raining. So that's it. Like, it's a good resource if you're just like, I when we travel anywhere, I always look for like packing lists for whatever country we're going to, because there's just stuff that you're like, oh shit, yeah, like that's a thing I just have at the gym that I forgot about.
Yeah.
Right. So like, think there's a big extensive list on the Power Plant site.
Think about the floor. I mean, the floor is always a consideration.
Right, yeah.
We know it's going to be a slippery floor, right?
Yeah.
We were there
right.
Last year. Super slippery. Prepare for that.
100%. No, it's funny. My wife sent me, like in like Snapchat, like your memories come back, or Facebook, whatever. And we had our buggy that we packed from last year, and it looks so silly to bring so much, but we were so prepared. It's fun, better to be over prepared than.
I don't think I've ever been to a Nationals where I didn't see at least one person borrowing something from somebody.
Yeah, right. So you use all this stuff in training, and you train for all these events, it would really stink to like, lesser your performance because you forgot something, So no, that packing list is a great idea. I'm going to post that from our page, like on like Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday this week, because that's a really cool idea, before people are traveling out Tuesday or Wednesday.
Just make sure you got all your nutrition that you need. Snacks between events are really important. Don't go experimenting, like go to the stand and buy a friggin' hot dog before.
Or like a Jack and Coke. Not recommended.
Wait for like the banquet for that, right?
So place for that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like competing, that focusing on the event at hand and not what's coming next and not what already happened is super important. And if you have questions, so like understanding like the volunteers are doing their best, the scorekeepers are doing their best, but there's also 300 people. So like, are we going to miss something? Absolutely. Like we're going to miss stuff. So when you do that, like doing it in a way that is kind and respectful of the fact that we're all doing this, most of us for free and doing our best. And like, if you have a question about your score, if you have a question about reps, like, just be respectful and wait for when, like, if someone is clearly in the middle of something, like chill for a minute and wait. Sure. That like, we've been approached like both at our own shows and at nationals with people that like come storming at the table, like like waving their phones in our faces and being like, this is outrageous. And you're like, sometimes it's just a typo.
Yeah.
Don't freak out. And like, or versus coming up calmly and being like, hey, I looked at the score sheet.
Yeah.
Like you want to keep track and pay attention to what's going on. And if there's something, like we're happy to fix it, but don't be a dick about it.
Yeah, right. There's right and wrong ways to approach it. Like make sure your stuff's right, but definitely approach it respectfully. Cause like you said, 300 athletes, everyone, I say this about every show, but everyone that's there is basically doing it for free. So, you know, they're giving up their Friday, Saturday, Sunday, some of them Thursday, traveling there so we can do this.
Yeah. And getting worked up about it isn't going to help your performance either. So even if you only want to think about that in selfish terms and are like, screw these people putting it on, I don't care. Like you wasting your energy on that is just a poor use of your time.
And not only that, I mean, it's still a relatively small community. So I guarantee if you were a dick at nationals last year, when people see you this year, they're going to go,
there's that guy.
No, for sure. For sure.
Be nice, have fun.
Yeah.
Pretty much just those two things.
Dante, is there anything we didn't mention from the, 3 years straight? Is there anything that, maybe popped in your mind, or did we kind of cover? We talked about a lot with tips. Those were some that we brought up.
There's definitely a lot that I was going to say, but I'll just piggybacking off of nutrition, especially for weight class athletes that make weight after rehydration. Make sure you have a plan. Like, if you're going to get an IV, if you're going to just drink water, I'm not going to be anyone's dietitian or anything, but it might not be the best idea to just gorge on donuts and fast food as soon as you're done, like weighing in after losing like 10, 15 pounds of water. But like I said, I'm not anyone's nutritionist, so I can't tell you what to do, but it might not be a good idea.
Yeah. And if you are doing a weight cut, be on time for the weigh-ins, like give yourself ample time to figure out, because every convention center that we've been in has had like windy, crazy corridors that look different from all the other windy, crazy corridors. And like, it's in these rooms that all look the same. So like, give yourself time knowing that you're going to be malnourished and dehydrated to like figure out where you need to go. Like, you don't want to be the person that's like rushing in with 2 minutes left for weigh-ins and then you miss weight and then you got like, just give yourself time, think about what you want to do and be there early. And I think this year they're doing the weight heights or the yoke heights on the day one of lifting. So that it's just weigh-ins at weigh-in time and then like come to the rules meeting.
That's another good one too. And this goes again, I'm gonna contradict myself earlier about people measuring shit. But if you know the height of your yoke, because all yokes are not created equal, measure, take a tape measure with you and just measure it. I mean, that's the only time I'll say like, measure anything.
And that's almost like the opposite thing though, right? Like we're in, because you don't know the exact dimensions of the implement, but you know your own, like you should know your own. You don't need to know the implement measurements, but you need to know your own measurements. So like, and then you're not doing the, like, I'm picking it up, I'm putting it down. How heavy is it going to be? How am I going to feel? Like measure from the floor to the bottom of the height.
Wear the same shoes.
I was going to say too.
Just measure it, and then you don't even have to worry about your shoes.
Right. 100%.
Like I always carry a tape measure in my bag.
Yeah, from the ground.
For sure.
Like from the ground to the bottom of the bar, and then you don't have to mess around with it, and it's just like one less thing to stress about.
Last year at OSG, Lynn had us taking heights for the car yoke thing, and we had people coming back for hours. The same people.
Oh yeah.
You're just like, dude.
Yeah. And
a professional athlete in particular that we won't name, who must have taken his yoke height like no less than 6 times.
Really?
We're like, dude, you've been doing this for 20 years. Like, you're gonna be
crazy. No, it would just, it would be so unfortunate, to train for however long you train for and how serious you're taking nationals and screw up an event just because you just had your yoke too high.
Like an
and then check it when you walk on the floor too.
Yeah.
Like that's something
people make mistakes too.
People make again, like there's 300 people going through and we're going to make mistakes. So double check it. Don't be afraid to like raise your hand and be like, no, I'm not ready. Like that's why they ask if the athletes are ready. So like, don't be an asshole, but stand up for yourself.
For sure. It's going to be a great experience for a lot of people that are listening. And I think that was a great, really, really good preview of nationals. Like I thought that was great points and everything.
I would like to add one more thing.
Monte, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that if I go through this nationals and I'm the only one again with one of the pieces of equipment that malfunctions, that someone is trying to set me up or something. I will say that.
That's actually a great point. Yeah, last year, 300 people did the sled.
You had it broke, right? The rope broke or the chain broke.
The chain just wasn't attached. If you watch the live stream, you can like see it slowly go off screen, and that was it. And you couldn't see like anyone messing with it or anything. Like it must have just like somehow, some way, the way it's set up, and I picked it up, must have just like slipped off.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, the volunteers do their best to check the equipment, but if you can eyeball it, make sure everything is like tight, loaded, set up properly. Like it doesn't hurt to take 2 seconds. And then like shit's gonna happen. Like I think you handled that so well.
Really did. Yeah, I was
really, really handling it with grace and knowing like that sucked.
I mean, it sucks.
But you didn't freak out.
like in my head, and I contribute to my parents too because they don't like it when I freak out. So I definitely learned right now, but. Just like in my head, I know like freaking out wouldn't accomplish anything. So yeah, it's frustrating and stuff. And like just take your anger out on when you do it again.
Yeah. No,
I got a faster time anyways. It was a warm up.
I mean, Brian did an event one time where he was doing an arm over arm truck pull and they had the brakes on and he pulled for a full minute. Yeah. And then they were like, do you want to do it again?
I guess.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
Go particularly well because for a full minute on a truck with brakes on it, but like shit happens.
It happens.
Yeah, and it couldn't happen to a better person last year. I was proud of how Dante handled it. Like,
absolutely. Because like that's a good example of what to do.
Lesser people could have.
Yeah, I specifically remember us talking about that afterwards and being like, "That dude just
that was awesome. That was great." And I just had one more thing pop into my head too, as we were talking about preparedness for nationals for competitors, is the rules meeting, like. Don't be the person that complains that something happened or something wasn't like defined if you had a question beforehand, because that is your time. Like there's so many athletes, and if you're all thinking something, I mean, trust me, there's going to be some bad questions. I hate to say that, but there's going to be some horrific questions. And I mean, being at the Arnold and Nationals, and we've all heard horrible questions, but don't be the person to just not ask a question, because it may be the thing that maybe they just haven't thought about that yet. Like, what are we going to do if this happens, or, XYZ, this happened because you guys have all been training the events. So maybe this happened to you in training and you're that 1 in a million that it happened to, and then it's going to happen again at nationals. So, ask questions, have your phone, and take notes. I always like taking, I mean, if you're old school and you want to take it pen and paper, do that. But I always have my notes app open, and little things, I jot them down. So that's a really good time to like ask the little questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if they don't define them, all bets can be off on game day, where it's like, hey, we're going with this way, and it may be the opposite way it should have gone, but whatever, So that just came to my mind.
No, that's a good point. It's your chance. That's your last chance. And if
they give you that hour, take advantage of it.
If you didn't get it squared away, then it's your fault.
Yeah. But we had talked a little bit. The last thing I want to talk about is you kind of hinted at a new platform that you guys were working on, and you said it had resources for strongman coaches, promoters, business owners. I know it's not out yet, but did you want to talk about that at all? Because I think it sounds super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we owned Power Plant Gym for 8 years. We just sold it in September. So it is thriving the same way it was before we sold it. And
it was not. I mean, it was sad in that we don't get to own it anymore, but it was a very good transition. It was good for us personally. the person that took it over couldn't have asked for a better owner to
Yeah.
carry it forward.
And it gives us time now to work on
Well,
our next big,
Yeah.
our next
Yeah,
big
yeah.
project.
Next thing.
We are launching a platform called Strongman.training, and the web address is literally strongman.training.
Yep.
And I essentially geared towards coaches, promoters, and business owners in the strongman and strength sports realm. So what we found in the time that we've been doing this is there's a ton of resources for athletes. And even just on like how-to videos and how to prep for a show and how to do specific events, but not a lot of guidance or structure in terms of promoting in particular. There's just huge gaps, and there's people that are doing a great job, and there's people that are doing a less great job. And I think a lot of that comes down to just like information and mentorship. So one of the things that I really wanted to get into is more just like coaching coaches. So helping people that that are got into strongman, like I want to coach, or I want to open a strongman gym, or I want to promote my first show, and creating a place where we can provide resources from our experience. But my greatest dream for it is to get other good coaches and promoters and business owners to contribute their experiences too, because I have been doing this for 10 years, but people have been doing it for 20, 30 years. And
there's a very common thread. I mean, not just in strongman, but across all strength sports, where the loudest voices are the most successful athletes, which is not intrinsically linked to being a good coach. Being a bad athlete is also not intrinsically linked to being a bad coach. So you can get both sides of that. But when you do have a successful athlete that may have been physically talented, and just this stuff just comes naturally to them, they don't learn how to teach that stuff to other people. I would rather have the guy that was mediocre, that had to work really hard to be mediocre, giving me tips on how to impart this knowledge to other people.
For sure.
So that's
and just like creating a one centralized source of information specifically about the organizational level of the sport with coaching and competing and business ownership. Because the more people that are out there like having profitable strongman gyms, the more people can participate in strongman in events that are good and well run. Like it benefits the sport. So
there's plenty of room in the boat for everybody.
So we want to help other promoters and coaches to do some of the stuff that we've done and learn from them too. Like I'm still promoting shows, and like I want to learn ways to get better at it.
It's just like competing. We've already done all the dumb shit, in business.
Like
we've already
that's brilliant. I'm excited.
Business decisions, and so
if we can help people to not mess those things up, that would be great. It's like creating the resource I wish that I had when I started.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I'll be really excited to see how we can be involved in it, and how we can utilize it. Because, and it's such a great thing that Brian said was, this sport is so many people say, okay, so I'm not gonna name names, but so and so was at World's Strongest Man, so I'm gonna use them as a coach. And then you hear the horror stories of them, and it's like, wow, like that's crazy. And it's just,
I mean, and there's not really a whole lot that a 400-pound man is going to teach a 132-pound woman about how to.
Well, yeah. And it's, well, you guys know from being involved in it so much, it's every class, every body type has different types of, like I coach Dante, but sometimes he picks up cues from a fellow middleweight that I just don't relate to because we're 60 pounds different. You know what I mean?
I mean, one of the first big posts that I put together for Strongman.training is coaching deadlifts for different body types, because the way that you're going to coach someone that's my size as a lightweight woman versus someone who's a middleweight versus someone that's a heavyweight man, our bodies are so different and our levers are so different. So just being able to take that into account. So it's not just like how to deadlift, it's specifically like how to coach the deadlift for people in different bodies. And strongman has such a wide variety of bodies. So that's the kind of stuff that we really want to get into with Strongman.training.
So unfortunately, if you go to Strongman.training right now, there's nothing there yet, but there will be.
There will be by the time the Nationals happens. There'll be a few things up, and it's going to be
let us know how we can be involved and help, because I think that's such a cool avenue.
That's the other part of it that we're really looking forward to, because we know so many good positive people like you guys and Cody and other people around the area, that I'm really excited to get them involved in it too. So.
Well, that's always that's how I'll end it. But you guys are people that have the same goal as us, is leave the sport better than when we found it. And Strongman.training's a great example of that. So congratulations and good luck with that. And, like I said, we'll help however we can. And I guess that's episode 148 with the Feeleys.
Thanks.
Thank you
We'll
guys.
see you
Thank
at
you guys so much. And
Nationals.
we'll see you all in Erie. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.